Yes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome for attending today's meeting. It is my pleasure today to welcome Professor Hamidullah Marazi to talk to us on the topic Ibn Arabi and his critique by Ibn Taymiyyah, a critical appraisal. Professor Hamidullah Marazi is a former director of the International Center for Spiritual Studies at the Islamic University of Science and Technology in IUST, Kashmir. Presently, Dr. Hamidullah is a visiting professor at the Department of Islamic Theology, Alia University, Kolkata, and an adjunct professor, Jamia Hamdard, New Delhi in India. Today's lecture will examine the principal metaphysical doctrines of Ibn Arabi, particularly Wahdat al-Wujud, and the theological and doctrinal critiques advanced by Ibn Taymiyyah. It will also consider the broader intellectual and historical context of this important debate and its continuing relevance to Islamic theology, spirituality, and contemporary Muslim thought from a balanced academic perspective. So we are very happy to have you today to talk to us, Professor Hamidullah, and we're looking forward to your talk. You will talk for as long as you wish. I don't know how long you like, and we will have some Q&A after that. So please go ahead when you're ready. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم أما بعد. First of all, I am very thankful to Brother Frank and Ibn Arabi Society who have just provided me twice chance to present my views on a critique of Ibn Arabi by Sheikh Ahmad Sarhindi and now by Ibn Taymiyyah. Because I have been the student of philosophy and Sufism for whole of my life, and I have been teaching this subject at various universities of Kashmir and then in Malaysia, and now sometimes also in Calcutta and Delhi as well. So this subject has always fascinated me, especially comparison between Ibn Arabi, Ibn Taymiyyah, and Sheikh Ahmad Sarhindi. And these are the personalities of Islamic world which have shaped their understanding about Tawheed throughout Islamic world, through the annals of history. For that reason, we need to understand these persons and their views about this very important, substantial topic of Tawheed, whether we call it Tawheed Wujudi, Tawheed Shuhudi, or Tawheed Rububi. So different names have been given to this Tawheed, but basic concern of all these thinkers, philosophers, theologians has had been with unity of God, that is Tawheed. And Tawheed is the cardinal belief of Islam. For that reason, their philosophy and their views have become very, crucial as well as controversial down the ages. And different people have, interpreted their views in their own way. And I am trying to also come to terms with the actual meaning and actual essence of these doctrines. And today I will be talking about Ibn Taymiyyah's critique of Ibn Arabi. And I will see that how Ibn Taymiyyah has seen this subject in his own way and what are his major views about Ibn Arabi. So to start, few figures in Islamic intellectual history have generated as much admiration and controversy as Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, revered by his followers as Sheikh al-Akbar, the greatest master and criticized by others as the chief architect of speculative mysticism, Ibn Arabi's doctrine of Wahdatul Wujud, unity of being, has remained one of the most debated concepts in Islamic theology and metaphysics. The strongest and most influential critique came from Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah, who regarded Akbarian metaphysics as incompatible with Quranic Tawheed. His critique subsequently shaped the theological outlook of later Hanbali and Salafi scholarship. Ibn Arabi's doctrine of Wahdatul Wujud, I just want to say something about that as well, although it has been debated much in different sessions, especially by Professor Dr. Yusuf Umar and my brother Dr. Manzoor Ahmad Bhatt, and before that also by many scholars. But still, in order to contextualize our debate, I just want to say something about Wahdatul Wujud once again. One of the greatest misconceptions surrounding Ibn Arabi is the assertion that he himself coined the expression Wahdatul Wujud. William Chittick notes that Ibn Arabi never used the expression Wahdatul Wujud. That term was coined later by his followers to summarize his metaphysical vision. The observation is significant because much of the subsequent polemic attacks which were labeled against him, these can be labeled rather than on Ibn Arabi, but to those people who have just coined this term. Instead of speaking of unity of being, Ibn Arabi discusses al-wujud al-haq, real being, tajalli, divine self-disclosure, and the perpetual dependence of creation upon Allah. In Fususul Hikam, he writes, فَالسُّبْحَانَ مَنْ أَزْهَرَ الْأَشْيَاءَ وَهُوَ عَيْنُهَا. Glory be to him who manifests all things and yet is their reality. This statement has often been cited by critics as evidence of pantheism. Yet, Akbarian commentators such as Daud Kayseri insist that the phrase refers not to an ontological identity between God and creation, but to the absolute dependence of contingent existence upon the divine reality. Similarly, in Fususul Hikam, in Futuhat al-Maqiyya, Ibn Arabi maintains both divine transcendence tanzih and divine eminence tashbih. فالحق منزه عن أن يحد أو يقيد وهو مع ذلك ظاهر في كل سورة. The real is beyond every limitation and qualification, yet he is manifested in every form. For Ibn Arabi, manifestation does not imply incarnation, hulul, or union, itihad. Rather, created beings possess no independent existence. They exist only through God's continuous self-disclosure, tajalli. Thus, the distinction between creator and creation is preserved at the level of essence, zat, while the created world reflects the divine names and attributes. Sayyid Hussain Nasr therefore argues that, quote, to identify Ibn Arabi's doctrine with pantheism is to misunderstand both pantheism and Ibn Arabi's metaphysics. This is a very important point which we need to note, that the term Wahdatul Wujud was not coined by Ibn Arabi himself. It was later on coined by people. Ibn Arabi's doctrine of Wahdatul Wujud in this way means that being is one, or wujud is one, and that one being is Allah himself. Everything besides Allah possesses no independent reality, but exists merely as the manifestation, tajalli of divine being. Creation is therefore understood not as an entirely separate ontological entity, but as the self-disclosure of the divine reality in different modes and degrees. Ibn Arabi further explains that God's essence, zat, and attribute sifat are ultimately inseparable. Likewise, the divine names Asma are nothing but various descriptions of the same divine reality. Consequently, multiplicity does not represent independent existence, but different manifestations of one absolute being. The theory proceeds through successive stages of divine self-disclosure in the state of la ta'ayyun, absolute indeterminateness. Divine being exists beyond all differentiation. Subsequently, through various stages of determination, tayyun, being manifested itself as separate archetypes and finally the physical universe. Thus, the cosmos is regarded as the manifestation of the one reality rather than an independently existing creation. For Ibn Arabi, the relationship between God and the universe is therefore fundamentally one of identity. The world possesses no existence apart from Allah. The well-known expression that the existence have not smelt even there. As it has been said, Al-ayanu ma shamat raihatul wujud, which expresses this conviction that only God truly exists while creation possesses merely derivative manifestation. Ibn Arabi has had enormous influence on mystic thought in Islam. Consequently, Ibn Taymiyyah had to write a treatise, في إبطال وحدة الوجود, refutation of pantheism, in which he strongly criticized Ibn Arabi's conceptions of Tawheed and its implication. Though it may seem sometimes contradictory what I said about Ibn Arabi, and now I am coming to Ibn Taymiyyah and he is rejecting and he is condemning his views about Wahdatul Wujud. So how it is possible that Ibn Taymiyyah has done that? But this is basically the matter of interpretation. The interpreters who have just interpreted the views of Ibn Arabi, they have just thought it likewise. But when Ibn Taymiyyah interprets Ibn Arabi, his interpretation is totally different. So we have to see what are those interpretations, as there are people who are supporting Ibn Taymiyyah and there are people who are supporting Ibn Arabi. Both have their interpretation of the Wahdatul Wujud. So in this way, we can just contextualize it. But perhaps Ibn Taymiyyah's criticism was too early. At least it had little influence in the Islamic East. Ibn Arabi had not yet come to sway the Islamic soul. It was later that his sway became complete. Practically everyone accepted Wahdatul Wujud and held it on the basis of mystical experience. It was at this stage that the Mujaddid appeared, Mujaddid al-Ibsani, that is Sheikh Hamad Sarindi, and he founded Wahdatul Shuhud. Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam al-Dhahabi, and some other theologians strongly opposed Ibn Arabi, and we find that we have been just enlightened by Karanko. He has talked about this subject and he writes in Syria and Egypt. There was a similar struggle against Sufi pantheism waged by Ibn Taymiyyah and the historian Muhaddis Zahabi. In the 8th century, the adherents of Sufism were found in Egypt and Syria, or only among immigrants from Persia and India. And I fear they had a bad name. So he says like this. So this has been the condition of Wahdatul Wujud during those times. But during the time of Ibn Taymiyyah, yet Wahdatul Wujud had not fruitioned and it has not spread to all parts of the world. It was the initial stage. The most influential and enduring critic still is considered to be Ibn Taymiyyah, because he has not criticized this philosophy from the mystical angle or as an experience, as we find in case of Sheikh Ahmad Sarindi, but as a theologian, as a scholar of Islam, as a muhaddis. So his criticism is theoretical in that sense, not experiential. While earlier jurists such as Izzuddin Ibn Abdul Salam, Taqiyuddin Subki, and Ibn Khaldun expressed reservations regarding certain Akbarian formulations, Ibn Taymiyyah offered a more post-systematic theological refutation of what he understood to be the doctrine of Watul Wujud. His criticism was not directed at Sufism as a whole, but especially against what he regarded as the metaphysical monism of Ibn Arabi and his followers. Similarly, Ibn Arabi understands the relationship between man and God in terms of profound ontological intimacy. We have to understand this aspect. The traditions regarding man's creation upon the divine image and the saying, who knows himself knows his Lord, are interpreted within this metaphysical framework by his supporters. Human beings become loci of manifestation for divine attributes rather than independent created beings standing against their creator. Ibn Taymiyyah's critique is regarded as metaphysical one because he has used the metaphysical language, and he thinks that the language used by Ibn Arabi, which is very much metaphysical, this language is very dangerous. In his view, it obscures the absolute distinction between the creator al-Khaliq and the created order, that is al-Makhluq. His concern was not with Sufism in general, as I said already, but with those doctrines that appear to erroneously to erase ontological duality. For example, in his fatwa, he says, وَأَمَّا أَهْلُ الْإِتِحَادِ فَإِنَّهُمْ يَجْعَلُونَ وُجُودُ الْمَخْلُوقِ هُوَ وُجُودُ الْخَالِقِ وَهَذَا مِنْ أَعْظَمِ الْكُفْرِ. The proponents of Ittihad maintain that the existence of the creature is the very existence of the creator, and this constitutes one of the gravest forms of disbelief. Elsewhere, he distinguished Ibn Arabi from other monists, while nevertheless rejecting his doctrine. وابن عربي أقربهم إلى الإسلام وله في كثير من كلامه تمييز بين الظاهر والمظاهر ويأمر بالشرائع ولكن حقيقة مذهبه هي مذهب أهل الاتحاد. Among them, Ibn Arabi is nearest to Islam. In many of his statements, he distinguishes between the manifest and the manifestation and enjoins adherence to the revealed law. Yet the true nature of his doctrine remains that of the proponents of Ittihad. So in this way, we can say that Ibn Taymiyyah is considering Ibn Arabi better than other people who adhere to this doctrine of Watul Wujud, in his opinion that he is making difference between Zahir and Mazahir. And he is also following the Sharia of Islam to a great extent. And he is also offering prayers. So in this way, he makes a difference between the adherents of Watul Wujud and Ibn Arabi in this respect. This passage demonstrates that Ibn Taymiyyah did not dismiss Ibn Arabi indiscriminately. He acknowledges his respect for the Sharia while concluding that his metaphysical premises ultimately collapsed. The distinction between God and creation. In another work, Al-Furqan Bain al-Awliya al-Rahman wa Awliya al-Shaitan, he states, وابن عربي وأمثاله يدعون أنهم من الصوفية وإنما هم من ملاحد المتفلسفة. Ibn Arabi and those like him claim to belong to the Sufis, whereas in reality they belong to the heretical philosophers. For Ibn Taymiyyah, the issue was fundamentally theological. The Quran repeatedly distinguishes between creator and creation, Lord and servant, worshipper and the worshipped. Any doctrine appearing to compromise this distinction threatens the essence of Islamic monotheism. As has been said by Halak, Ibn Taymiyyah opposed pantheistic mysticism, but he himself remained committed to the sober and traditional Sufi ideal. So this is a very important point. There are many people who think that Ibn Taymiyyah was opponent of the Tasawwuf in toto. But this is totally wrong because he was the person who was adhering to the Sufi silsila of Qadirites, and he just gave commentary on Fathur Rabbani of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, and he himself used to observe voluntary prayers and understanding one verse he would offer 200 voluntary, rakah. And all the traits of the Sufis, the true Sufis, were found in him, and he himself has praised a group of Sufis, and he called them as the Aimatul Huda, like Sheikh al-Qadir Jilani, like Maruf Karki, like Siri Sakti, and like Fuzail bin Ayaz. So in this way, this common perception about Ibn Taymiyyah that he was totally opposed, who was a very staunch opponent of Tasawwuf as such, is totally wrong. But he was only opposing those aspects of Tasawwuf which in his view were going contradictory to Islamic Sharia and the Quranic concept of Tawheed. This assessment is important because it dismisses the common assumption that Ibn Taymiyyah rejected Sufism in its entirety. His criticism targeted speculative metaphysics rather than ascetic spirituality. Ibn Taymiyyah's principal critique in this way can be regarded about Wahdatul Wujud as fundamentally incompatible with Quranic Tawheed, because in his reading, it erased the essential distinction between the creation and the created. As he wrote, the saying of the people of Wahdatul Wujud is that the existence of creator is identical with the existence of creator. This is among the greatest forms of disbelief, because it abolishes the distinction between the Lord and his servant. Because it has been attributed to Ibn Arabi, Al-Abdu Haqqun wa Rabbu Haqqun, Ya Layta Shayri Man al-Muqallib. Ibn Taymiyyah's Majmul Fatawa has mentioned these aspects. The leaders of the people of Ittihad, Unism, or Ibn Sab'in, Ibn Arabi, Al-Misani, and those like them, they are among the greatest innovators and the farthest from the guidance of the prophets, according to Ibn Taymiyyah. In another famous passage, Ibn Taymiyyah observed, among the proponents of this doctrine, Ibn Arabi is the nearest to Islam, because in many places he differentiates between the manifest, as I mentioned already, as-zahir, and the manifestations, that's mazahir, and he observes the commands and prohibitions of the Sharia, and speaks much about acts of worship. This, as I already mentioned, that here Ibn Taymiyyah is making difference between other Wahdatul Wujudis and Ibn Arabi. Perhaps the most overlooked testimony is Ibn Taymiyyah's own acknowledgement that he once admired Ibn Arabi, and he writes, formerly I was among those who held a favorable opinion of Ibn Arabi and regarded him highly because I found many beneficial discussions in his books, such as Futuhatul Makkiyah, Al-Kun, Al-Muhkam, Al-Marbut, Ad-Durat Al-Fakhriyah, and Matali Al-Nujum. At that time, I had not yet become acquainted with his intentions in Fususul Hikam and similar books. This admission is of immense historical significance. It demonstrates beyond doubt that Ibn Taymiyyah's criticism did not arise from an instinctive hostility towards Sufism or Ibn Arabi. Rather, his reservations developed after engaging with texts he believed contained doctrinally prohibited formulations. So here I would just like to make this point. There are some scholars like William Chittick, with whom I had a very good discussion during his days when he was in Delhi, and I was also working in the Institute of Islamic Studies. So they have tried to show that Ibn Arabi had just, his books were not read by Ibn Taymiyyah, and the judgments or the remarks of Ibn Taymiyyah are based on not complete information about his books. Whereas the truth is that Ibn Taymiyyah has gone through almost all of his books, which are very important, and especially his two important books, that is Fusul Hikam and Futuhat Makkiyah. So to this allegation that Ibn Taymiyyah has just rejected Ibn Arabi without fully grasping his meanings, or without understanding, or without reading all of his books, this assumption is not right. This admission is of immense historical significance. It demonstrates beyond doubt that Ibn Taymiyyah's criticism did not arise from an instinct or hostility towards Sufism or Ibn Arabi, as I already mentioned. As Alexander Kench reaches a similar conclusion, he says his polemic was directed primarily against what he regarded as the pantheistic implications of Akbarian metaphysics rather than against Sufism itself. So why Ibn Taymiyyah has criticized or rejected or condemned Ibn Arabi? It is because of those views in his books which were in the view of Ibn Taymiyyah going contrary to Sharia or contrary to the concept of Tawhid in Islam. Otherwise, he did not reject everything what Ibn Arabi has said. Historical context. So we know that Ibn Taymiyyah, he was living from 661, 728 to 1263 to 1328. And Ibn Arabi was existing from 560 to 638, that's 1165 to 1240. So now their debate has just become prolonged afterwards, and Ibn Taymiyyah came after him, and then he criticized him based on his books. So critique of Sufi metaphysics, it was based on metaphysics of the Sufis rather than their theological views in all aspects. Emphasis on purity of Islamic orthodoxy was one of the important aspects, and this was the part of the debate between Ibn Arabi and Ibn Taymiyyah. And according to Ibn Taymiyyah, he was interested in defense of Tawheed, that is oneness of God, and the rejection of pantheistic ideas. And on around these issues, the debate was going on. Although Ibn Taymiyyah, as I mentioned, he admired and he praised some of the books of Ibn Arabi, and especially Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah, his attitude changed significantly after reading Fusul al-Hikam. Unlike many later polemics, Ibn Taymiyyah did not reject Ibn Arabi indiscriminately. Rather, he believed that Fusul al-Hikam contained metaphysical propositions that contradicted the Quranic doctrine of Tanzih, that is God's absolute transcendence. His fundamental concern was not mystical experience, Zok, itself, but the preservation of Tawheed by maintaining an absolute ontological distinction between the Creator, Al-Khaliq, and creation, Al-Makhluq. He writes, لَيْسَ فِي الْمَخْلُوقِ شَيْءٍ مِّن ذَاتِ اللَّهِ وَلَا فِي ذَاتِ اللَّهِ شَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْمَخْلُوقَاتِ. Nothing of the creation is part of Allah's essence, nor is anything of Allah's essence contained in creation. This statement encapsulates Ibn Taymiyyah's theological methodology. Any formulation appearing to compromise this distinction was, in his view, incompatible with Islamic monotheism. Henry Lust remarks that Ibn Taymiyyah's theology is fundamentally grounded in safeguarding the Quranic distinction between creator and creations. His criticism of Watul Wujud occupies the center of Ibn Taymiyyah's criticism. According to Ibn Taymiyyah, later followers of Ibn Arabi transformed mystical insights into an ontological doctrine which intentionally or unintentionally raised the distinctions between Allah and creation. The point is that if Ibn Arabi had this experience as a subject to experience, but it was his experience. It was not a doctrine which could be attributed to Islam or religion. It was his personal experience, subject to the experience. But that was later on transformed into a doctrine, ontological doctrine, and that was problematic in the view of Ibn Taymiyyah. He writes, the doctrine of the people of the unity of being is among the most corrupt and most unbelieving of doctrines. Elsewhere he says, these people make the existence of the creator identical with the existence of the creation. For Ibn Taymiyyah, this was not merely a philosophical mistake, but a theological danger, because it threatened the central Quranic doctrine, that is, Laisa kamithlihi shay'un wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. There is nothing similar basir. There is nothing whatsoever like him. Thus, Ibn Taymiyyah understood Watul Wujud effectively, negating divine transcendence. Ibn Arabi's doctrine of Watul Wujud, as referred by Ibn Taymiyyah, he says that Hawlai min akfar nas, the people of Wujudi, these are among the most unbelieving of the people. He continues, Qawlhum shar min qawl al-Yahud, ashar min qawl al-Yahud wa Nasara. Their doctrine is worse than the doctrine of the Jews and Christians. For Ibn Taymiyyah, any formulation suggesting ontological unity between Allah and creation contradicted the Quranic doctrine of divine transcendence, as mentioned earlier, Tanzih. Nevertheless, Ibn Taymiyyah himself cautioned against indiscriminate kufr. One of his most frequently cited legal principles states, لَيْسَ كُلُّ مَنْ أَخْطَأَ فِي شَيْءٍ مِّن مَسَائِلِ الْإِعْتِقَادِ يَكْفُرُ. Not everyone who errs in matters of belief becomes an unbeliever. Likewise, he writes, إِنِّي مِنْ عَزَمُ النَّاسِ نَهْيًا أَنْ يَنْسِبُ بَعِيدًا إِلَى تَكْفِيرٍ. I am among those who most strongly prohibit declaring a specific individual to be an unbeliever. So he also gives the caution, but he is criticizing the views, not the persons in that way. Sometimes he even criticizes and condemns even their persons, but mostly he is more concerned with their views rather than their personalities or their personages. These statements illustrate an important distinction in Ibn Taymiyyah's methodology between condemning doctrines and declaring particular individuals outside Islam. Ibn Taymiyyah's reading of Husus. The harshest language employed by Ibn Taymiyyah concerns Husus al-Hikam. He writes, Kalam Sahib al-Husus fi min al-Kufr ma yukhfa. The author of Husus contains statements of disbelief that are unmistakable. Elsewhere, he argues, وَمَنْ قَالَ إِنَّ وُجْدُ الْخَالِقِ وَوُجْدُ الْمَخْلُوقِ فَأَكْبَرُ مِنْ وُجُودِ النَّصَارَى, as I mentioned. Such statements demonstrate that Ibn Taymiyyah understood some passages of Husul literally rather than symbolically. That's also a reality. He took them in the literal sense, not in symbolic sense. So we have to be very much cautious about that. So now, according to him, methodology would be to see these all beliefs from on the whetstone of Quran and Sunnah, and also to understand what was the understanding of the Salaf, the ancestors, pious ancestors of Islam. And secondly, what the sound reason is saying about different aspects. And he says sound reason never contradicts authentic revelation. Dartaruzul Aql wa Naql. Overview of Ibn Arabi, Ibn Taymiyyah's critique of mystical and philosophical innovations, defense of traditional Islamic belief, Salaf, opposition to divine eminence and pantheism, theological clarity on the relationship between God and creation. Despite being an intractable opponent of several of Latter's key areas, this is what Ibn Taymiyyah had to say about Ibn Arabi. Quote, despite his dividends, Ibn Arabi is the closest to true belief among the mystical philosophers, and his teaching is in many respects better than theirs. He at least distinguishes between the manifest one and the concrete forms of his manifestation. Moreover, he affirmed the validity of divine command and the prohibition of the divine laws as they stand. He also instructed the travelers on the mystical path how to acquire high morals and the acts of devotion, as is common with other Sufis and their disciples. Therefore, many pious worshippers have learned the rules of their path through his instructions and thus have greatly benefited from him, even though they sometimes fail to understand his mystical subtleties. His letter to Sheikh Abdul Nasir Manbiji, Watul Wujud, and then one quote which has been present, the creator is distinct from his creation. In Majmul Fatawa, he has mentioned that. And then he has tried to say that propagating believers deviating from orthodox Islamic teachings are attributed to Watul Wujudis. And he says that introducing non-Islamic ideas from Sabans and other communities is also attributed to these Watul Wujudis. And then he says that they have distorted the concept of God's relationship with the creation at times. He criticized passages he understood as implying unity of being and rejected interpretations compromising divine transcendence, the concept of divine eminence and other things. Ibn Taymiyyah's objection to divine eminence, Watul Wujud, Everything is manifestation of God. God's essence is inseparable from creation. Ibn Taymiyyah's stand was, this blurs the line between creator and the creation, contradicts the Quranic view of God's absolute transcendence, leads to heretical belief similar to pantheists or the people who believe in incarnation. He rejects his views, which he considers to be very close to Ittihad and Hulul, considered incompatible with Quranic doctrines of God's uniqueness, the views of Watul Wujudis, and he thinks that pantheism and the danger of Hulul is found also in these beliefs. The belief that God and creation are one and the same, criticized by Ibn Taymiyyah as heretical and contradictory to Tawheed. And also he thinks that the belief that God can incarnate within his creation is also taking, what Wujud is closer to Hulul. And association with some mystical and earlier heretical groups, these views have been just taken from them. And Ibn Taymiyyah condemns it as a denial of God's unique existence. So now we have modern scholars like William Chittick and others who have tried to interpret Ibn Arabi's views in a different way. For example, we have John Hova. He says Ibn Taymiyyah defended scriptural theology while engaging philosophical arguments, critique of concept of Watul Wujud, existence, Sufi view of Wujud. Everything is existence, is reflection of God. God is the only true Wujud. Necessary being, creation has a derivative exist from God. And Ibn Taymiyyah's rejection, belief in this indistinguishable essence of God and creation, misunderstands the nature of God's transcendence, leads to theological confusion and misguidance. Theological confusion and heresy. Ibn Taymiyyah's concerns, Hulul and Tawheedul Wujud, unity of being, confuse the nature of God, creates heretical views similar to those held by non-Islamic groups, Sabians, and the people who believe in incarnation. Denies God's distinctiveness and eternal nature. Greek philosophy, and he sometimes thinks that Ibn Arabi was influenced by the philosophers like Al-Kindi and Farabi, and there have been influence from the Neoplatonists and some sources like Sabans and Jews and Christian beliefs also. And then he also has mentioned these ideas mislead Muslims and distort Islamic monotheism. Ibn Taymiyyah sees these influences as weakening the core principles of Islam. Ibn Taymiyyah's rejection of Ibn Arabi's works. Ibn Taymiyyah initially viewed some of Ibn Arabi's works positively. Final rejection of Fusulikam. After further study, Ibn Taymiyyah rejected this work for promoting contradictory views, criticized it for supporting ideas of divine immanence, conflicting with the Orthodox Islamic understanding of God. The importance of traditional Islamic knowledge, authenticity of knowledge. Islamic knowledge should be grounded in the Quran and Sunnah, not mystical or philosophical speculation. Ibn Taymiyyah emphasizes the importance of traditional Islamic scholarship over later interpretations influenced by mysticism. The rejection of speculative ideas, mystical interpretations that blur distinction between God and creation lead to theological errors in the view of Ibn Taymiyyah. Adherence to Salaf. Salaf as a model, Ibn Taymiyyah emphasizes returning to the beliefs and practice of Salaf, early generation of Muslims. The early generations understood the Quran and Sunnah without speculative mysticism or philosophy. Pure reason in divine revelation, pure reason, aql sari, Prophet and the Quran. Any deviation from the Salaf leads to confusion and misguidance in view of Ibn Taymiyyah. Summaries of Ibn Taymiyyah's approach: core beliefs, strict adherence to Quran and Sunnah based understanding of God and creation. The rejection of speculative mysticism and philosophy, especially divine immanence and pantheism. Defense of Tawheed as the central belief in Islam. Main goal to safeguard the purity of Islamic belief from heretical innovations, to uphold the orthodox understanding of God's transcendence. Conclusion. Ibn Taymiyyah's critique focused on preserving the clarity of Islamic theology, opposing to mystical views that he saw as distorting the relationship between creator and creation. Legacy. Ibn Taymiyyah's work continues to influence Islamic thought, especially in the areas of theology and Islamic jurisprudence. And there is a lot of discussion still going on in the Islamic world on those lines. A careful examination of the primary texts reveals a far more nuanced picture. Ibn Taymiyyah admired and praised many aspects of authentic Sufism, praised numerous Sufi masters belonging to the Qadriya spiritual lineage, and initially held Ibn Arabi in high esteem. His criticism was directed primarily at what he understood to be problematic metaphysical doctrine articulated in Fusus Hikam and certain passages of Futuhat al-Makkiyah, particularly those that, in his judgment, blurred the ontological distinction between the creator and the creation. One of the central philosophical concerns of Iqbal was also the infiltration of Neoplatonic metaphysics into Islamic intellectual tradition. In his writings on Asrar-e-Khudi, Sufism, and Islamic philosophy, he repeatedly argued that many concepts commonly regarded as Islamic were in reality philosophical imports from Plotinus and later Neoplatonism. Among these was the doctrine of Tanazzulat al-Sita, the six descents, which explained creation as a series of emanations from the Absolute. According to Iqbal, this theory does not originate in the Quran or Sunnah, but derives from Neoplatonic philosophy. It portrays God as gradually unfolding himself through successive stages of existence until the material universe appears. Such a conception inevitably leads to a view of divine immanence in which the distinction between the creator and the creation becomes blurred. So I just wanted to say this because this legacy of Ibn Taymiyyah has continued till date. Even scholars and poets like Iqbal, they have also talked in these terms, and there are many scholars in the Islamic world who are toying to this line. And there are two types of critiques to Ibn Arabi. One is from the mystics themselves, like as we have already mentioned about Sheikh Ahmad Sarindi. He just has criticized Ibn Arabi as a Sufi. And he also underwent all those processes Ibn Arabi had undergone in the mystical path. And there is another group of people who have criticized Ibn Arabi based on the doctrines or the theological teachings of Islam in order to safeguard Tawheed. And among them were Ibn Taymiyyah and especially Iqbal and some other scholars. And if there will be any possibility, I can just have one lecture also on Iqbal and Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Arabi in the next sessions. But I think that I have taken much time. So if there is some discussion, that will be better because there are many things to be said on the subject. But basic points which were very important, I thought I have just tried to cover those. But still, there may be some problems or some issues or some aspects which we need to deliberate upon, and that is quite possible. But I would like to say that we need to deliberate on the subjects dispassionately without taking sides, because these philosophers and these thinkers and these Sufis and these theologians are very important for us, because their insights are very, I should say meaningful, and which can just provide us a chance to debate very important cardinal beliefs of a religion. One point which is very important, as has been intriguing me always, that the matters which pertain to unseen world, those have been taken care of by Islamic doctrine in the scriptures, like Quran and Sunnah, which is known as mutashabihah. And in the matters of unseen matters like God's existence or life hereafter, resurrection, and astrological aspects of life or prophethood or spirit and ruh, those have been taken care by the scripture, and we have been told that these are mutashabihat, and we have to believe in those. While as muhkamat, we can do ijtihad on those. But the problem with these Sufis who have been speculative Sufis, they have been doing ijtihad on the mutashabihat, and they have been leaving the muhkamat aside. While as we have been prohibited to do ijtihad on mutashabihat, we have to believe those mutashabihat on the authority of the Prophet and revelation. So this is the main concern of all those scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah, that let us not speculate about God's existence and just make it what wujud or what shuhud or this and that. Rather, we should try to depend on the authority of Prophet in order to believe how to believe. Because Quran has articulated these beliefs in a sufficient manner, and there are details about the existence of God and belief in God and prophet and life hereafter, resurrection, revelation. So we should not make these as the subject of our speculation. These are the matters of Iman. Whereas the matters of ilm or knowledge or speculation or ijtihad or muhkamat, where we can use our reason and then reach to some conclusions. And there we may sometimes err. And there is nothing wrong in that if we just make any error in ijtihad about muhkamat, about different matters we face, social affairs. As has been said, that if a mujtahid is making right judgment, he will get double reward. If he makes wrong judgment, still he will get one reward. إن الحاكم إذا اجتهد فأصاب فله أجران وإن اجتهد فأخطأ فله أجر كما قال. That if a hakim makes ijtihad and makes right ijtihad, he will get double fold reward. But if he makes ijtihad and errors, still he will get one fold reward. So, but in the matters of unseen world like God, other things, so we have been told that we have to believe those. These are the human al-ghaib. We have to believe it on the authority of the Prophet, on the authority of the revelation, and we have not to make speculations about that. So this is a very important point which we need to always keep before our eyes when we are discussing these subjects. With these words, I am once again very thankful to Brother Frank and Melbourne in the Arabi Society that they are providing us a platform to discuss these very important subjects which are very controversial, and a lot of debate has taken place on them throughout the annals of history. But we need, as scholars and students and intellectuals, we can debate those subjects. There's nothing wrong in that, and we should debate them, and we should see what people have said, and then evaluate on the basis of our own understanding of their arguments, and then come to some conclusion after reading and assessing and evaluating all these arguments presented by these great minds which have shaped our understanding about our religions. Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Hamidullah. This is, I don't know whether I say you gave us the answer or you made the question bigger.
Yes.
It's a topic, it looks like it has been going on for many years or decades.
Yeah.
And I don't know who we are to try to say now we know the answer and to fix it. So the mind always wants to come to a conclusion, but it looks like this is an area where it's not possible to come to a conclusion. But somehow we have no choice, do we? We have to still try to come to a conclusion. So thank you very much for giving us food for thought on the area. You have been very comprehensive, and you discussed it from all the perspectives without taking sides, which is very, very difficult to do, and you've done it very well. Thank you so much for that. So now it will be nice if anybody likes to make any comments or ask any questions and have a discussion about this topic with Professor Hamidullah. Please, if you have anything you want to say, you may simply start speaking or put your hand up as you wish. Or sometimes maybe I start speaking to allow people time to form their thoughts. I don't know whether we really, Professor, we need to come to a point where we come to a conclusion, or we say this is different interpretation from different perspectives, and maybe all the perspectives are accurate and correct, or is it also not valid to say that? We should really say the truth is the truth, regardless of where you look at the truth from, it is still the truth. So is that what we have, what we are going to try to reach, or are we going to try to make it in such a way that we understand it, even though, what's the word? In Ibn Arabi's term have the idea of the insan al-kamil. And I wonder whether the insan al-kamil is someone who is not only having intellectual beliefs, but he has experiential dhawq, connection to the reality. So he sees the reality directly. I wonder whether we can say if someone like that, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sees the reality directly. Would he be able to would he see the thing as two separate, the creator and the created, or would he see the creator and the created are one?
Basically, I think that only the prophets, not only one prophet, but all the prophets, they had access to the divine realities because they were conversing with God. For example, all the prophets, in case of Moses, Jesus, Solomon, Abraham, and Joseph. So they used to receive the revelation from Allah, and sometimes Allah was talking to them. فَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. Allah talked to Moses, as as we talk, and completely he talked to him and he spoke to him. And in the same way, sometimes it has been, mentioned in the Hadith Qudsiya that Allah just used to say, throw something in the heart of the Prophet ﷺ. There was no mediation in this way, and then this hadith Qudsi was just the words were from God, but spoken by Prophet ﷺ. And there are such other several examples. So prophets have that access. So prophets are the complete people in this world, and according to Ibn Arabi and others also, that Insan Kamil is the prophet. And prophets have access to that truth. And for example, we have the concept of Marazi, that is when the ascension took place. So Prophet was so close to Allah. Although the people say that he was very close to Jibreel, and he just reached very close to Allah. It was just to the space of 2 throws. So arrows. But some people say that even in this case, in Ibn Hajar Asqalani, he says that he saw Allah as could be seen, and this has been said also by Anwar Shaikh Kashmiri, that he saw Allah as Allah could be seen, as was possible to see Allah. And in this case, Hajar Asqalani says that why Moses told Jesus Prophet Muhammad go again to ask Allah that he should lessen the number of the prayers for the believers. And it was because of the reason that he wanted to see him who could see Allah. Because he could not see Allah. When he said, Lantarani, you cannot see me, O Moses. But Prophet saw Allah. Al-Asqalani says this. But that's a different point. My point is that the prophets are aware about those realities. They are the perfect men. It is not the perfect men of this niche. It is the perfect men of Prophet. So even Ibn Arabi has talked about that, and in this Abdul Karim Jili, in his book Al-Insan Kamil, he also alludes towards Prophet as Insani Kamil. But so far as we humans, we weak mortals, we have to believe what prophets told us, and that is Iman. So we have to accept religion on the basis of Iman, not on the basis of ilm always. Because Iman comes first, ilm comes later on. Knowledge comes later on. If we just make knowledge as the criteria of belief, then most of the people of the world will not become religious at all. Because they don't have knowledge. They are believing. They believe in someone. But whom they believe, who is authentic, who is true, who is truthful. Amin al-Sadiq. And all the prophets were like that. Because their actions were, speaking their words, and their words were speaking their actions. They were true to their faith and their preaching. So in this way, they were emulated by the people, accepted by the people without understanding many of the things they were preaching. And their understanding was not very, and it is not possible also to understand the things which are unfathomable, like God, like soul, like angels, like hereafter death, like the punishment in the grave, as has been mentioned by Ghazali and others as well. So in this way, they believe on the authority of the prophets. And this is Iman, this is Aqidah. This is not knowledge, this is not philosophy. But when we want to make this philosophy, this Aqidah as philosophy, or Tasawwuf as philosophy, this becomes problematic. So fathers in Islam, alhamdulillah, as a student of comparative religions and philosophy and Muslim philosophy and Western philosophy, I have been convincing myself that in Islam, this distinction has been taken care of. That religion has not to, graduate to philosophy, and philosophy has not to graduate to religion. But in many religions now, it has become philosophy now. Whatever they say, this philosophy, it has no implication for practical life. But in Islam, there is a distinction between philosophy and theology in this way. So religion is to be accepted on the basis of the revelation from the prophets and the scripture. And then people may develop different type of philosophies, but philosophy can't become the whetstone of religion or revelation. So revelation is the ultimate source of knowledge. After sense perception, reason, intuition, there is revelation. We can just use our intuition to, make many things mystical and mystify things. We can use reason to philosophize things, and we can use our sense perception to reach to some scientific, truths or the evidences. But when it comes to religion, we have to just believe in the revelation, as has been said by Ghazali. Sufis are at the feet of prophets, where the sainthood ends, prophethood starts. So prophethood is head of the sainthood. So prophets are the ultimate, I should say, sources of knowledge about God, about life after life, about unseen things. In this way, we have to believe in the prophets. But then after believing, then we can just see that there are also rational arguments. There are, scientific arguments, or there are maqasid sharia. There are some maqasid behind these all beliefs, as has been done by Ghazali and Shatibi and Ibn Ashura and many scholars later on, Shahullah Dahlevi. They have shown that what is the secret, what is the validity, or what is the merit of these beliefs and these worships we believe on the basis of the authority of the Prophet. But it has not to be believed only on the basis of our understanding, our knowledge, because knowledge is very limited. You have been given very little knowledge about the matters like soul, like God, other things. So we have to believe in this, as Prophet used to say, Allahumma asni alayka kama asnita ala nafsik. Oh Allah, we qualify you as you have qualified yourself. We can't qualify you. And we have been told that Qul huwallahu ahad. Say that he is ahad. So you, and then Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, then Ayatul Kursi. So we have been told how you have to believe in God. Not using only your reason to understand God. You'll not, because as Descartes would say, there is not even a single proposition on which all the philosophers agree. Not even a single proposition. So when we are not, philosophers are not able to understand the proportions of the worldly things, how we can understand everything on the basis of reason about God? And it has been said, Malum shud ki hich malum na shud. Our philosophy leads us there where we know nothing. We know nothing. And there is not agreement on any aspect of anything. So in this way, we have to believe on the basis of authority of the prophets and the revelation, rather than use our speculative philosophical techniques to understand those realities which are beyond human mind.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Hamidullah. I was just wondering, when I asked about the Insan al-Kamil, I was trying to put myself in the picture as a human being. Not only about the saints and the prophets. So, you mentioned beliefs and philosophies. What about this third thing called dhawq? Dhawq is not dependent on belief, it's direct connection. Is that potential available for us, average human being on this planet, or is that not for us? Because this is why I like the concept of al-insan al-kamil, and started to mean not only for prophets and saints, but for every human being who can develop somehow spiritually to reach that point where he can have direct connection and experience or seeing with the Almighty. Or is that not available for us? We have no choice but to rely on intellectual beliefs and philosophies, and that's it.
I forgot to respond to this. Basically, as has been said rightly by Ghazali, there is one very important source, that is all. And he says that is intuition, wijdan. And there are many things which we can understand even about the Sharia by the Zawq. We can understand the mysteries of Sharia through Zawq sometimes. Yeah. And as this point has been highlighted by Anwar Sheikh Kashmiri. he says that these Sufis have understood some of the important Sharia ahkam better than others because they have also experience about those things. And that has been not, cut off. We have been, that is there, and there is a hadith of the Prophet that the prophethood has ended. Then Nubuwwat has ended, but it is 40th or 46th, 60th, dimension is still there, that is Mubashirah, the good dreams. And dream is based on those intuitions and Zawq. And about the Zawq is, that is open for us, and any person can just reach to the better understanding of truths of religion through Zawq, and that is open. This door will never be closed. Even prophethood has been closed, but this door has been not closed. Even it has been said by the Prophet himself that these mubashirat will remain there, and it's because of that reason that we have the good insights coming from different, mystics and Sufis, and they have made it very enriched. They have made religion very enriched. Although, but as Iqbal would say, when they were discussing about their akhlaq and different type of maruf, that was very good. But when they started indulging in metaphysics, that created a problem. Metaphysics was not their domain. They wanted to make religion philosophy. When we philosophize religion, problems are created. But as long as we keep religion, as a moral and ethical transformation, spiritual transformation, so their views have been appreciated. And this point has been highlighted also by Ibn Taymiyyah as well as Iqbal, that we have not to make religion or tasawwuf as philosophy. We have to make it as, as assistant of religion to make us to understand and fathom the realities behind the ahkam of Sharia, commands of Sharia. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I saw earlier Atufa Dar had her hand up, and you took it out again. If you like to speak, Atufa, please make your comment.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Actually, it's my daughter's account from which I am operating right now. That's why it has shown. That's why it has shown Atufa. I want to ask Professor Naseem Rafiabadi sir a question that what arguments did Ibn Arabi simply put forward when he supported Wahdatul Wujud? Because it seems to me as if these concepts can be derived from pre-Islamic, you see, religions like Hinduism, Buddhism. When you speak of Wahdatul Wujud, it also gives us a connection to reincarnation of God. So I want to know what arguments did actually Ibn Arabi put forward, and he supported them to such a large extent that he got so many support for this. Thank you very much.
Very, very good question, mashallah. And this question has been intriguing me all along for all these years. I was teaching or I was reading about Wahdatul Wujud. Very good question. Intelligent question.
Thank you, sir.
So, you're welcome. So basically, as a student of philosophy and Sufism, I could understand that after some time, Sufism was influenced by Greek ideas, especially Neoplatonism. And if I will get time, I can just trace out the influence of the Neoplatonism, Hinduism, Vedanta, and other such type of philosophies and Buddhism even, on Wahdatul Wujud one by one. And it does not seem to have emanated from Quran or Sunnah.
Right, sir.
They try to interpret it in the light of Quran and Sunnah, but it has emanated from somewhere else. The influence has come from else. It is not based basically on Quranic teachings or Islamic literature. And we can trace out, for example, we have the concept of Neoplatonism, that is emanation. Then, that is known as emanation. That is Nazriya Sudur. This word has come out from God. According to Plato, there was this world of ideas was there. And this world was the shadow of that, particular and universal. Then Aristotle he made it topsy-turvy. He said, no, there was matter and there was form. And then later on came Platonist. He said there was not a matter and there was not a form. There was only one being, that is God. Then what about the universe? He said this world has emanated from God. As water gets forth from spring, light comes out from sun, so has come this world from God. And there were descents, there were emanations. And then he talks about nous. and Muslim philosophers also took it from there, and especially this Akhwan al-Safa, their 50 treatises, those are full of those teachings, and they have equated prophets with Plato and Aristotle. And in this way, basically, they have taken the source of these all areas was not Islamic, not Quranic, not scriptural. It has come from the foreign sources, and they have taken many ideas from different sources, and then they try to interpret them in the light of Quran and Sunnah. But mostly the ahadiths which have been used by Ibn Arabi, those are fabricated ahadiths. For example, and such type of ahadiths he has quoted, and those have been identified by Sheikh Ahmad Sarhindi and also Ibn Taymiyyah and others. So these ahadiths are not authentic in many ways, and those are just inspired by the different sources which are foreign to Islamic sources. So in this way, this is true. But it happens, and sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, because the books of the Greeks were translated into Arabic, and those were spreading their influence everywhere. And Sufis and philosophers came under their impact. Even Ghazali came under their impact. As has been said, Ghazali just went in the womb of philosophy, wanted to come out, could not. So when you are studying something, definitely you get affected, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. So in this way, my point is that you are right. So the influence of, and this is the point which has been highlighted by Sheikh Ahmad Saridi. He says that Futuhati Madaniya Mara as Futuhati Makkiya Beniyaz Sakhtan. The sayings of the Prophet have made us indifferent and independent of the Futuhati Makkiyah. We don't need the Futuhati Makkiyah, we need Futuhati Madaniyah, that is the ahadith of the Prophet. Then he says, we should have dealing with the nusus of the Quran, ordinances, teachings of the Quran, not the fusus hikam of Ibn Arabi. So such type of verdict has been given by Sheikh Ahmad Sarhindi. We need to depend on these, and this is the point which has been highlighted by Iqbal, that Tanuzulat Sitta have been taken by Sheikh Ibn Arabi from Neoplatonism, that is Platonist. And if you go his book Annates, you'll find all these ideas there in different way. But those have been, they have tried to Islamize those and give them Islamic coloring, but the origin is not Islamic in that way. So this is a very important
right,
point.
Sir.
People say sometimes this is a foreign tree in the Islamic soil. About type of Sufism, about Watul Wujud, he says it in his Asrar al-Khudi. And then there was a lot of hue and cry against Iqbal when he wrote this Asrar al-Khudi. He challenged this philosophy through different type of arguments, Iqbal, in his Asrar al-Khudi. And in this way, we can say that there have been foreign influences on this philosophy to a great extent. While as Ibn Taymiyyah is saying that we don't need these ideas about beliefs. We can take advantage from these ideas and philosophies for other reasons, but not in case of beliefs or the mutashabiyat. But about muhkamat, we can just take advantage from the views of other people, because there is no contradiction between reason and revelation, otherwise in Islam. But so far as revelation is concerned, had there been no need of prophets, then philosophers would have solved the problem. There was no need of prophets then had man been able to solve these problems on his own. So prophets were sent to the world in order to tell us how to believe. Belief can come only from the scripture, not from the philosophy or from any mind of the person, because that is such an intricate subject which is beyond the comprehension human beings, because that is human al-ghaib. That is based on the ghaib, and we don't know ghaib. And when we don't know anything, how we can conjecture about that, or how we can speculate about that. So that is a point which has been mentioned. But people have taken a lot of influence and impact from different sources.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you. Thank you. I forgot your name. The father of your daughter. Father of
Irfan.
Muhammad Irfan.
Yeah, thank you, Irfan. Yes.
Yes. Nur Alam, please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Professor Hamidullah Marazi for bringing this topic alive again. But I thought we have, in our various sessions for last 2 years, we have discussed many times about Wahdatul Wujud. But Professor still seemed to believe Wahdatul Wujud is an invention of Ibn Arabi. It's not in the Quran, or hadith. And he also attributed that it may be influenced by Plato and other Neoplatonistic idea that Ibn Arabi has been influenced by. And I think this sort of belief is still prominent. It's more promoted by Salafi ideology, which is a invention of colonialism in the last 200 years after the book of some of the books where Ibn Taymiyyah has been promoted, especially Abdullah bin Wahab and some of his books, and also promotion by Saudi other scholars who are funded from the king. So that's what my belief. But I want to ask the professor very serious question. The Frank mentioned truth is always truth. Is Plato or Abraham or say Plato is before, say 4,000 or 2,000 years before Jesus' birth, which is almost say even Abraham is 4,000 years. So maybe Plato is in between Abraham and Jesus. So that's where it's a 2000 BC or something like that, right? So Abraham was in this planet 4,000 years. But Quran clearly talk about the oneness of being. Allah is one, and in Ibn Arabi clear about it. He said that Allah, Bismillah Fatihil Ujud. Allah, in the name of Allah, who opened the existence. So Allah has opened the existence because he wanted to know and he wanted to be known and he loved to be known. That's why he created the creation. That's why he is the muzher in kulle mawjood. So Allah is mawjood in kulle muzher. Muzher is the loci where things are manifested. So and he also mentioned that Allahu muhitun begaibin kulle shahidin. So everything what is shahid, what you can witness with your sense, he is muhit. He is encompassing that visible cosmos. He encompasses it. And then he said, Huwa mustawla ala batini kulle zahirin. Everything zahir, everything manifested is mustawla ala, occupied, holding sway over everything what is manifest. The Rumi said, Ghazali said, everything world of seen has a root in the world of unseen. No seen can exist without the support of the unseen. So Allah's existence, Allah give anything to existence where Allah himself give the existence. Without my ruh, I cannot exist. And my ruh is nothing but Allah's light. My ruh and your ruh, you have no existence. And a plant has no existence. An animal has no existence. The sun has no existence unless there is a ruh in it. Ruh is the light from Allah. So Ibn Arabi from the kalima, the main condition of to be a believer is the La ilaha illallah. And then you need to add Muhammadur Rasulullah because Muhammadur Rasulullah, through him, La ilaha illallah is manifested. So on that formula, La ilaha illallah, La Razzaq illallah, La Mawjud illallah, La Rahman illallah, Allah's all 99 name. Everything. Say yes, Sami, Amar the one I have the hearing, my hearing cannot exist without La Samiya illallah, La Sami illallah. I cannot Basir, Amar the mind, Basira cannot have this power until Ya Basir, La Basira illallah. So everything in this world is nothing but Allah's existence. So that is truth is always truth. Why Wahdatul Wujud is foreign? Can you explain to me? Because you say, this is where I'm a bit frustrated that this idea has been already presented. And as you mentioned, I also read this polemic image of medieval Islam, this book by Alexander Nish. He clearly explained the entire thing, and then he concluded that, of course, some people misunderstood Ibn Taymiyyah. Yes, it is, but Ibn Taymiyyah was not as critical as Allama Iqbal or the people like, this person who wrote this book. He's also an Indian and Kashmiri. His name is S.A.Q. Hussaini, and he is also a university professor. He wrote this book, The Pantheistic Monoism of Ibn Arabi. They all interpreting Wahdatul as a pantheism. No, it is not pantheism. And they're also saying it is monism. It's not monism. Ibn Arabi doesn't say any of those things. Those are all colonial terminology. And by using them, they're saying that it's a hulul, Ibn Arabi is kafir, it's a satanic idea, all sorts of things. And those are really, really objectionable comments about Ibn Arabi. I am very disappointed that still that kind of belief exists in the intellectual and community, and also this speculative mysticism. Ibn Arabi does not promote a speculative mysticism. Plotinus did. Hugh, Richard, Saint Victor, Nicholas of Cosa. Yes, Christian mysticism has some of those speculative mysticism, but Ibn Arabi's mysticism is based on actually unveiling, kashf, which is a dog-based, experiential tajalli. So that's where I would go. And in the treatment of imagination, al-khayal is a metaphysical structure. Those sort of recognition is not there in the speculative mysticism. So that's why I wanted to ask this question, why Wahdatul Wujud is outside Quran and Hadith. I don't understand.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Noor. Thank you for the question.
Your question is very good and very much informed question. And you have gone through a lot of books on the subject, and mashallah, you have participated in all the programs which were presented on Wahdatul Wujud, and people have tried to explain this in their own way. I was just trying to be on my topic and try to see Ibn Arabi from the angle of Ibn Taymiyyah, and keeping myself aloof in many ways. So I may have my own reservations about both Ibn Arabi as well as Ibn Taymiyyah. And I don't believe to call people as Wahhabis or this and that. We should not dub people like this, because we have to talk about the ideas, not about the persons. And we should not go by the propaganda. A lot of propaganda is going on against this group or that group. As scholars, as intellectuals, we do need to fall on the trap. And point is that, for example, when we are discussing Ibn Taymiyyah, so he has written a lot of material. His Majmu' al-Fatawa, about 33 volumes I have all. And he has devoted about 1 volume on this subject of Tasawwuf and Wahdatul Wujud and Wahdatul Wujud. So we have to see that whole material, how he just talks about Wahdatul Wujud on his terms. We should not impose our terms on him, or the terms which people have imposed on Ibn Arabi. And there is possibility that Ibn Arabi might have not said all those things which have attributed to him. Those things have been said by some of the followers of him, or the people who are influenced. But those all things are being now attributed to Ibn Arabi. Whatever is before our eyes in the form of books, people are talking about that. Whether he believed in such aspects or not, we don't know exactly. Because everything is not preserved. People can dilute anything in this world. It was done earlier as well. People were attributing books to people which way they have not written. So in this way, whatever is before us in the form of the books of Ibn Arabi, especially Futuhat al-Makkiyah and Fusus al-Hikam, on the basis of that, people have talked. And in that way, what's the point that you say truth can be found everywhere? But when we are making difference between philosophy and religion, we have to see what is the category of the prophets, what type of teachings they have given, and what are the sayings and thoughts of the philosophers, and what are the thoughts of the mystics, poets, scientists. If we just say no, every truth about realities which are beyond our sense perception, those have been there. That has been the prerogative of the prophets. Prophets have been teaching about the realities, unseen realities. And science can't talk about unseen realities. They are talking about physical world. In the same way, a poet can talk about literature. He can't talk about those aspects which are scientific. In the same way, there are philosophers. They are talking about based on their reason and logic. They come to some conclusion. There is speculation. My point was that when we make religion as a philosophy, so that then we just indulge into the realm of philosophy. And then many things we are just, proving or disproving. And then you have your own logic, I have my own logic. So point is basically when it comes to religion, we have to believe religion on the authority of the prophets, not on the authority of philosophers, on the authority of poets or scientists. And if we do that, then we will dilute the epistemology of all these realms of knowledge, whether it is prophethood, whether it is poetry, whether it is Sufism, whether it is philosophy. Their realm of knowledge and the epistemological tools for all these, judging these all fields are different. And for judging truths of religion, there is relation. There are prophets, there are books, there are scriptures. And we can't just generalize that we can understand everything through science or philosophy or this and that. No. So first we believe that we can philosophize. But without believing in different type of doctrines, how we can just use our reason and then justify, no, it should be like this, not like that. And then there would have been no difference among the people had it been like this. But there is difference. When a philosopher looks towards religion, his view may be different. Sufis may be different. But you are right that we can't just denounce anything in toto, but we can't accept everything in toto also. There has to be a criteria. And what is the criteria for religion? In my view, it is Quran and Sunnah. And on basis of that, like Ibn Taymiyyah and Sheikh Ahmad Sarindi and all the opponents of Wahdatul Wujud, they have tried to put these views on the whetstone of Sharia and scripture, and then they have found that there are several things which are lacking from the Islamic point of view. And then they have shown that where from these things have come. These are not from scripture. These are not from revelation. These have come from Greek thought, Neoplatonism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Vedanta, or some other sources, or even the Persian mysticism and Manichaeism. So in this way, we have to be very much contextualized. And in this context, these people have said that Ibn Arabi has deviated at many places from the actual path of Islam. And for the reason, Sheikh Ahmad Sarindi, although he was himself a Sufi, he said it was because of his, he stopped at a place when he reached in the Sufi journey to this stage that there's only one being, then he stayed there. Had he passed through that stage, he would have reached another stage that we are basically servants. We are not part of this being of God, but we are his servants. That is Abdiyat. And we are the shadows of the attributes of God, not the essence of God. We do partake in the essence of God, as has been, because fi kulli shay'in lahu ayatun tadalla annahu aynahu. We are not his aim. We are the shadow of his attribute. Fi kulli shay'in lahu ayatun tadalla annahu wahidun. He is wahid, he is one. No one is like him. Lesser composition was similarly. So in this way, we can see that there have been deviations because Ibn Arabi was not a prophet. He was a man, he was a Sufi, very great Sufi, no doubt. But there is possibility of erring. And for some people like, Sheikh Ahmad Sarindi, Ibn Taymiyyah and others, they have shown that what are his errors. And they have shown it. And next Sufism, next style of that, only prophets are, not fallible. All other Sufis are fallible in their thought, and they are immune to the influences from external influences. Except prophets are not influenced by Satan. They are not influenced by any external influence, but only they are always under the guard of God, under the guidance of God, and under the protection of God, because they are never misguided by anything. But every other person is immune to those, is not immune from those influences. So in this way, they have shown the influence. And I can, if there is some chance, inshallah, I can show you some influences from Greek, some from Hinduism, from Buddhism on Ibn Arabi, and which are not Islamic, sources, which are not from the revelation, which are basically from the rationalization or the philosophizing or different type of speculation of the people. So in this way, we can't defend everything of any person. And I will just end with this saying of Imam Ghazali. He has just given a very good formula to us. He says, you should know the truth so that you know the truthful. You should not go by Marifatul Rijal, we should go by Marifatul Rijal bil Haq. Wallaysal Marifatul Haq bil Rijal. Know the people by the truth, not truth by the people. Truth make people as the criterion of truth. Make truth as the criterion of the people, whether they are right or not. But when we become attached to persons, Ibn Arabi, Sheikh Ahmad Sarandi, Ibn Taymiyyah, then we want to justify everything what they have said. Let us see what is good in them, what is bad in them, then evaluate things and come to some conclusion on our own. Because no one is the ultimate truth except the prophets or the scripture in this world. And we should not become cult worshippers, that we should worship only Ibn Arabi, we should worship only Ibn Taymiyyah, we should worship only Sheikh Ahmad Sarandi. No. Let us see what is good in them, what is live in them, and what is dead in them. Because they were humans like us and were better humans than us, but they were also humans. So in this way, if we just see from that angle, then we will appreciate their good things, but we will not, defend them at every point, that everything, whatever they say, we have to defend that. No, we have to be, dispassionate when we are just evaluating any personality. Thank you very much. We can have some more detailed discussion on some other occasion on the subject, because this is very interesting. And your questions were very, very intriguing.
Thank you very much, Professor Hamidullah. I just want to add one point to Nur al-Alam. There is only one truth, but there are 8 billion peoples in the world. So there are 8 billion people looking at the same truth, and they see it differently based on their level of development and understanding and etc., perspective and spiritual development. So it's not really any of us should say, well, it's only one truth, so we should all say the same thing. That's not the way God created us. God created us to be different and to see different aspects. So we need to respect other people and learn from each other, as it were, without trying to say, well, I know the truth, so what are we wasting our time talking about? I want to ask Arshid Ahmad Shah, he's got his hand up, if he would like to make his comment. Are we okay, Professor Hamidullah? You still have time?
Yeah,
we're
please,
not going.
We can go till tomorrow evening, no problem.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Nourishment for the arts.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
All of you. Some question in this for a comment that is a very good discussion on Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Arabi, the two contradicting philosophers on the subject of Wahdatul Wujud. Wahdatul Wujud is circulating and making a circle around Sufism and mysticism. I have a very important question in this regard that, sir, what is the epistemological position of objectivity of Sufism and objectivity of mysticism? Is mysticism purely objective, or it is just subjective? And these subjectivity is interpreted by Ibn Taymiyyah. The subjectivity of Ibn Arabi is interpreted by other philosophers. Sir, is it objective or is it subjective? Sir, please.
Very good question, mashallah. So sometimes questions show that the questioner is very. So basically, Sufism is subjective. It is not objective. And this point has been highlighted by Ghazali when he says that Sufis have their own experiences which are only special to them, no one else. No one is partaking in the experience of the Sufis. It is not like the experience of the prophet. Prophets have experience from the angels, and they get the book, they get the revelation. Then they share that book or that knowledge or that experience with the people, and then they preach that. But Sufis, in most cases, have these individual subjective experiences, which are their experiences, which have nothing to do with other people also. Because when they undergo a lot of, exercises, mortification, and Sufi, riyaza, and mujahida. And then they also have a lot of obligatory prayers as well as voluntary prayers. And then they reach to some realization of things. But that becomes their experience. That becomes their, I should say, personal, subject to response to those things or what they get from that exercise. And sometimes they are not able to share that with others. This point has been also mentioned by Abdul Haq Gangohi. He says that Prophet ﷺ has gone to Marazi and then he came back. Had I gone there, I would have not come back. And Sufi remains only to that extent when he is in this experience and he just undergoes that experience. And this point has been also highlighted by Sheikh Ahmad Sarindi, that I have also reached to the stage where Ibn Arabi had reached when he found only one existence, that's God existing everywhere, nothing else. And then he says it's just like during the day, we are oblivious of the sun and moon. But when we come out from day and we reach to evening, we find there is a moon, there are stars. But a Sufi is overwhelmed by the presence of God because he concentrates on God. He says, La Musa illallah. And he thinks there is nothing existing except God. But when he comes out from that state of mind, that experience, then he finds, no, he himself is existing. World is also existing. He says, Sheikh Ibn Arabi remained only at that stage when he found that there's nothing existing except God. But I just passed through that stage. I reached on the stage that I also exist, as moon and the stars exist during night. So I came to that stage. And then I found, no, we are the best state of man is to be the servant of God, servitude. So in this way, the Sufi experience is personal. It is not, it can't be shared with other people. And for the reason Ghazali's, I always quote that, Ibn Mu'taz's the couplet, Kana ma kana mimma lastu azkur. Fazanil khair wala tasal al khabar. It was what it was, I don't remember what it was. Have the good opinion, don't ask about details. The Sufis can't tell you the details of that experience. That is their experience. There is one, attribution has been made to Baiz that he also had his own ascension. But if you see that, you'll be astonished at what he says. But when Prophet went to the Miraj, he gave the all details about every iota of the details what he saw during Miraj. How the different kafilas were going, how he went from Makkah to Medina, when he was coming back, and what happened during that whole journey. So Prophet can relate that because that is objective. So far as the experience of Sufis comes, that is subjective. And for the reason Ghazali says the Sufis are at the feet of the prophets, where the sainthood ends, prophethood starts. So everything has to be under the shadow of the prophetic guidance, and that is the whetstone for even explaining whether a Sufi experience is right or wrong. And this point has been explained by one of the great Sufi master, whose name was Maudud Chis. He says, if any person is inviting you towards Quran and Sunnah, that is tasawwuf. If anyone is inviting you to someone else, that is not Sufi, he is a Satan. Because Sufis have to also remain subservient to the Sharia. They have to and they can't say that what I see, what I feel, that is the truth, that is the right, that is the haqq. No. They have to be subservient to the Prophet. Otherwise, their Sufism is istadraj. That is the cheating of the Satan has been mentioned by many Sufis. So in this way, this is not objective criterion. This is subjective, and it varies from person to person, Sufi to Sufi. But so far as the prophetic truth is concerned, that does not vary. Their teaching is similar, and all the prophets have taught the same message. They have not taught something else because they say, Tilqai nafsi. We don't say it from our heart. It is revealed to us. But Sufis, they get it through their own inner self, through their own inner experience, which is not always coming from above. It is coming from inside. So in this way, that may be right, that may be wrong. And that can be judged only on the whetstone of the revelation according to Ghazali, according to other Sufis also, according to Maudud Chist, and even according to Junaid Baghdadi. He says our teachings are restricted by Quran and Sunnah. In one hand, there is Quran, and in the other hand, we have Sufism. If it is not, aligned with Quran and Sunnah, then that is not our way. Our way is always, restricted by Quran and Sunnah, and we have to follow that way in all cases. So in this way, I can say that this is subject to experience, and it can't be imposed on anyone. It may be your personal experience, and you do need to share it with others, and it's better not to share, because you may just put people in fitna. What you have experienced, others have not. How you can tell them that I have experienced this? How they can believe in this? But they have to believe in their experience of the prophets or the teachings of the prophets, because that has come from Allah, and they have been commanded to preach it. Sufis in most cases remain silent for that reason. They don't reveal what they have just experienced, and they say it is between us and our Allah.
Thank you, sir. But I have just from William James, who has done a great work on mysticism. He said that there are some qualities mystics share in common, and mysticism should be universally accepted, that those characteristics are that incommunicability of mystic experience, naivety, it is passive, and from those qualities of mystic experience which all Sufis share in common, he puts forward his argument that in that regard mysticism is highly objective. And from one more point, that we have a great Sufi poetess, she is Laldat. She was not Muslim, but she was a great mystic. So from this point of view, sir, how can you justify that mysticism is subjective, it is not objective, from William James' point of view, and from Laldat, who was mystic but not Islamic?
Basically, there may be some of the views of the Sufis which can be shared, and they have shared it, mashallah. Ghazali has shared, even Rumi has shared, Shahullah Dalvi has shared, Sheikh Ahmad Sarandi has shared, Ibn Arabi has shared. But those can't be imposed on people that these you have to believe like this. They may say, but still they are not able. Sometimes, in case of Ibn Arabi especially, there is one objection which people have raised, that the critiques of Ibn Arabi have not understood his subjective experiences, and they have tried to interpret differently. So he meant something else. His language was symbolic, but people have understood it wrongly. There is possibility of misinterpreting those sayings, these Sufis, if they explain those in the public. So for that reason, in most cases, their teachings or their experience of the Sufi is totally different from the experience of the Prophet. So that's the point. And prophets have been told to preach whatever is being given to them, revealed to them. But Sufis have been very much selective, and they just are giving their teachings only to those who are very close to them. They call them murid, their disciples. And they do disclose everything to every person. If they have some feeling or some experience, they just relate that to their very close disciples. And the disciples should be also very much, they should be also confident. They should be confident people on whom they have confidence. And every person can't be told by the Sufis everything whatever the Sufi has experienced. So in this, because otherwise they will take it otherwise. And there are some symbolic terms, and there are some such type of feelings which are not communicable to each and every person. Common people will be misguided by those, revelations or the experience of the Sufis. So in this way, but that can't be made as a common or objective criterion for truth. Whereas objective criterion for truth is revelation, not the Sufi experience. However, you can just benefit people by your insights, by your whatever new things you have experienced, and you can help them. For example, a person who has undergone different type of Sufi practices, and he has found the taste of prayer. Now we can tell them that you can do this like this during night, you can do this during the day, you can do this, and you will also find their taste. But unless and until you yourself find their taste, you will not understand what the Sufi has undergone. Because his experience has been personal, and for that reason he had worked very hard. Because for becoming a Sufi, you have to work. You have to work very hard. But for becoming prophet, it is only the choice of Allah, whom he wants to make prophet. And the prophet is a mission. He has to preach that. But the Sufi, he may have also mission, but he has to keep many things only unto himself, because those all things are totally personal, are subject to, which can't be communicated to each and every person. Maybe sometimes he may communicate to his own close disciples are novices, not other initiated ones. And for the reason, there is a complete system in Sufism of the discipleship that's known as Piri Muridi. And this one Sufi is just telling, that's known as sometimes Sina Basina. They just tell their own people about those realities or those experiences. They don't make those common as the Prophet teachings are to be made common. And it needs some more explanation, but because of the paucity of time here, I think we can have some separate session on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I just want to add something to Arshid about the objective and subjective. Maybe you like to consider from the point of view, my understanding of Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi's Wahdat al-Wujud means there is only one. So when we say subject and object, we are creating two. So if you look at life from the point of view of the subject, you see one view. If you look at it from the point of view of the object, you see another view. And I think Ibn Arabi's understanding is that from the unmanifest, the manifestation came out. So from the one, the many came out. The two, if you like, are a manifestation of the one. So when Allah said, in the Hadith al-Qudsi, I loved the world. I wanted to know myself, or to love that I created the world. So he is, as a subject, created the object. But if you go back to the unity of being, which is oneness, then there is no two anymore. The subject and object become one. So all the subjects, when they reach a certain point of coming back to the unmanifest, then they will see life as one. Then there's no difference between objective and subjective. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone, but to me, that is how I can understand how subjectivity and objectivity can be synthesized together as the one thing. It's just looking at it at the same thing from different perspectives, from the inner and the outer.
Yeah, just I wanted to add one point, with your permission. I was just very much in search of this hadith. كنت كنزا مخفيا فأحببت أن أعرف فخلقت الخلق.
Yeah.
But most of the muhaddithin, they have said that this is spurious. This is.
Yes, I heard that too. Yeah.
So I became very much worried. Then I was seeing that in this hadith also, they call it the hadith, Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu. That also I found spurious. And these hadiths have been relied upon by Ibn Arabi greatly in his both books. I just want to make this point.
I agree with you. I have heard that as well. What can you do? I just assume Ibn Arabi said it, therefore I give it legitimacy. But I cannot say without any doubt it must be the truth. Yeah. I have to be, God forbid, a prophet before I can say that. I never will be that. So of course.
The hadith, no, before I came to know about this, I was thinking maybe it looks very nice in this, it supports the view of Ibn Arabi.
But it fits in many other religions, Professor. Yeah. Many other religions say something similar, so it gives it validity. It's many traditions give that same validity. Who knows himself knows his Lord, and the idea of spiritual development with dhawq and further depth of dhawq. You get to the point where you can see a reality directly as it really is. Yeah. So that's man arafa nafsahu arafa rabbahu. Is helping us to know ourselves, because if you don't know yourself, how can you know anything, let alone knowing God? So of course knowing thyself has to be a prerequisite. Can I ask Atufa's father?
Assalamu alaikum. I actually don't have a question, but a request
yes,
to you people all, that you see, I just want to respond to Al-Noor Sahab that I don't feel Salafi thought is purely a post-colonial creation. Its core theological methodology and foundation principles predate Western colonialism by many centuries. I request Professor Hamidullah Marazi Sahab to have a meeting on it, to have a Zoom meeting on it. Actually, this comes in a debate nowadays. Every Tom, Derry and Hicks says that the Salafi thought is actually a creation of a Western creation to counter the real Islam or the Sufism. I want you people to please organize a Zoom meeting on it so that we can be enlightened. It's my request. Thank you, sir.
Can I ask you to please send me an email with a few paragraphs, exactly what you like us to talk about, and or send it to Professor Hamidullah if you have his email, or send it to me. You have my email, or send it to my WhatsApp.
I have got the contact number of Professor Hamidullah Marazi. I think that he has understood what I mean.
Good, excellent. I'll leave it with you then. Yeah, thank you.
Inshallah, we can help. And second point is that's true also, because sometimes we are just going but by these rubrics. We should not annoy any person. We need all people as Sufis. Basically, we are Sufis, and whether we accept or not, somewhere we are Sufis.
In my paper I have reference how Allama Iqbal was appreciating Ibn Arabi in his PhD thesis, and how he started writing in his later life against Ibn Arabi. So, and he was influenced by his colonial master. He was given the title of Sir Allama Iqbal. So that Sir title influenced him to go different directions.
It's a very great claim, and you need to support it.
Yes, I have his book. I have the letters, his letters. Yeah, I have his letters, and I can. And
that's why I request Professor Hamidullah Marazi Sahab to deliberate on these topics in the next meeting, because it's very
Dr. Maruf has written about it. Yeah, many of the people has written about it. So, and how he was influenced. In my paper, I have reference to it. I gave the link to the paper. I suggest you collect that one, or if you want me, I can send you the PDF copy of the paper. Yeah.
Noor Alam sir.
Secondly, I request Noor Alam Sahab to please give the name of the book which you were holding in your hand.
I already gave it. It's in the chat.
Okay.
I would like
in the chat. If you save the chat,
thank you, sir.
Just save it. Save the chat, and then you can see it. I already responded to that book. That is Alexander Nix. He's a very well-researched book on the polemic against Ibn Arabi.
So,
thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
One point I want to make, Professor Noor Alam.
I am not professor, sorry. I am just a researcher. I'm just doing some research. So I am basically a disciple of Ibn Arabi. I am a student of Ibn Arabi, yes.
I can call you Brother Noor Alam. That's okay?
Yes, yes, you can say brother. I am an engineer by profession, yeah.
My very dear brother, engineer Noor Alam. So we can have a separate program on Iqbal and Ibn Arabi, and I can just deliver one lecture on that. And then I will take up all issues which because we don't need to see these things. We can just see the people through their writings, not what people have said about them and what.
Yes. My paper has list all those things. Yes.
Because they are now not there to defend themselves. So we have to just.
That's right.
Rather than.
Anyway, many thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Professor Hamidullah.
Thank you, everyone.
Arshid, you still here? Want to say something? I saw you put your hand up. If you want to say something or ask Arshid Ahmad Shah.
I'm very thankful to Professor Hamidullah Marazi sir for enlightening us with his views on the session of Ibn Arabi and Ibn Taymiyyah. And we will inshallah have one more session on Ibn Arabi and Allama Iqbal, one of the most important topics. And what my brother Irfan Sahab has said, that one more session on post-colonialism and Salafi thought, contradiction or reconciliation. We will have a session on that too, inshallah. And I'm very thankful, and I learned a lot today.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have come to the end of our talk. I think we spent enough time. And thank you very much for everyone for being here and for making the place more juicy in your presence. And thank you enormously, Professor Hamidullah Marazi, for your patience and putting up with all the different views and putting us all together. Thank you very much for that. I look forward to giving you or asking you to the opportunity to come and talk to us about Iqbal. Do you like to do that maybe next time? We'll connect with email and decide on that.
Thank you. Yes. Conclude.
Sorry, I didn't hear. I think there was some disconnection.
There's some problem.
Yeah, just an email confirmation. Yeah, he agreed. Yes.
Yeah, good. All right. Thank you very much again, Professor. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam.